The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for our Exploring Your Purpose webinar. And we're going to just hang tight here for a couple of minutes, a minute or so, just to let people join in, and so we don't have to repeat ourselves. So we'll be with you in just a second. Okay, it looks like a couple of more people have joined us here, and we're going to get started to talk about exploring your passions. So this is a series, a two-part series on purpose, and the first part of purpose is exploring your passion. So we want to welcome you to 12 Points, and thank you for joining us here today. Want to point out that there is a chat where you can ask questions. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll get to it either during the presentation or at the end. So please feel free to participate that way. And let's hope my screen goes. So who are we? I am Deb Cartisser. I'm a senior wealth advisor here at 12 Points, and my passion is helping women to become financially empowered. And really what we do as a firm is to have people's finances and their whole financial world set up to support their dreams and their vision for the future. And part of that is to be able to articulate your passions. So this is particularly important to us today. And I've been at this for over 30 years and helping some of my families on their fourth generation of wealth transfer. So Barbara is my co-host. Barbara, why don't you introduce yourself? And
Sure. My name is Barbara Mayetta. I'm also a wealth advisor here at 12 Points. My passion is working with clients who are approaching the end of their career or early in their retirement, and helping them find meaning, fulfillment, and financial security in their retirement. And I've been at this now for about 8 years, but this was a change to my career. I've been part of financial services for over 25 years. But about 8 years ago or so, I decided that I needed to find more meaning and fulfillment out of my career. And I did that passion search and figured out that this was where I wanted to be. And very happy that I did that search, and very happy that I acted upon what I found during that search. And Tracy is here today to help and share some of her experiences in her transitions and search for her passions. So Tracy, can you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Tracy Hartford. I'm also a wealth advisor here at 12 Points. I have the opportunity to work with women and families on understanding where they are today and where they want to go, and help guide them in that process. And I'm excited because this is my passion. And like Barbara shared, 3 years ago, I did a whole career pivot. I was in one industry for 22 years and decided I wanted to do something more impactful, something that had more meaning to me. And I ended up finding opportunities where I wanted to be. So I'll talk more about that during this presentation, but excited to be here today. Thank you for joining us.
okay, there's always something that glitches on these. Go ahead, Barbara.
So when we're working with people who are approaching retirement, and thinking about that transition, we don't just focus on the financial security part of that, but we really want to work with our clients to help them think about how do they find what they're living for? Because retirement isn't just about living as long as you can, but it's really about having a next phase of life that also has something to live for. We've developed a process and some tools that we use with our clients, and we're going to go through some of that with you today and share some of those tools with you. So when you leave today, we will email you out this presentation so you have some tools to play with on your own.
Well, and to point out also that this isn't just for retirement or approaching retirement, it's for all of us in everyday life. And if we can find and identify our passions earlier in life, so much the better.
And especially for women who are often very focused on taking care of their careers, their families, their children, and don't spend the time doing the self-reflection.
So we're just talking a little bit about passion and what is passion, and really it's about those feelings, those activities, those things that you're doing in your life that draw you in, that make you excited, that light you up from the inside out. And they're motivating, they're captivating to the point that we are forgetting to eat. We are doing it for hours on end, and time is passing unnoticeably because we're so excited. And it's also about something that sustains us. So we're all going through tough times at various points in our life. And what is it that you can have within your life, or that you devote time to here or there, whatever you can spare, but helps you through those difficult times?
You know, I especially relate to the picture in this particular slide, and I think about if I'm standing in front of a sunrise with my arms up and my fists pumped, I must be really passionate or really excited about what that day is holding for me. And that's the beginning of thinking about what am I doing and where is that passion that's going to motivate me to build something, grow something, learn more, or just share with others. And I do want to mention on the challenges and setbacks, we often get the question, what's the difference between an interest and a passion? And one of the ways that you can really understand, is it just an interest? Is when it starts to get tough, if moving forward and being motivated to build upon your passion, and it starts to get tough and challenging, and then you decide, nah, it's not worth going forward, that was probably a really good interest, but not really a passion. If it's a passion, it's going to drive you to go and move past those challenges.
So talking about where you find passions, we sort of divided this into two ways of thinking about this. And one is going within and really thinking about and spending time alone with yourself or in conversation, but really examining what are the places and points in your life where you've been really excited about things, and think about the activities you love, that you love pursuing, and why. And, devoting time to articles, to websites, to podcasts, all those things that sort of bring information in and at you. And then spending quiet time journaling and meditating, because really you're going to find this as an inner whisper, not as something that's coming in through your mind. I like to think of it that the intuition knows before your mind does. So pay attention to those quiet whispers, those nudges that you get as you're going through your days and your life, and expanding on some of these things that you're pursuing. And then out in the world, talking to people and exploring, trying new activities, bouncing ideas off your best friends, your spouse, the people you work with, and really, talking.
So I think this is a great way, actually, I think of it sometimes when exploring these with my friends, or maybe people I would like to be friends, because it's really a great way to expand relationships that you have, take it to a more personal level of what excites you, and sharing that with each other and exploring that with each other, I think can really help take your relationships with people to a new level. And Deb and I were just talking yesterday about maybe ourselves even doing, there's a book that's listed at the end of this presentation called The Alchemist, which is a story of a young shepherd who is going through self-discovery. And we were talking about maybe we ought to do that with like a little book group and explore the book together and understand how each other have learned from the experience of reading that. So lots of ways to explore this with other people.
So I think it's important to point out that passion isn't necessarily a straight line, and discovering these things isn't necessarily a straight line, and isn't typically a straight line. It's really following the lit up trail in front of you, following the next step, taking the next action. And really, it's not necessarily about the coconut to the head moment. It's really about the little nudges, the little things that captivate you along the way.
One of the things I like to tell people when we're going through this, working with them, is that you're not going to find, most people are not going to find a big aha moment. Aha, I found my passion, let's go for it. It's not going to happen in one moment, but it's going to happen along the way with lots of little, aha, I learned something about myself. Aha, I learned something else about myself. Deb mentioned journaling. This is where journaling can really be helpful. So as you're starting to explore and think about this more, journal at the end of the day so you catch all those little ahas. What did I learn about myself? And then maybe if you're really lucky and it comes together, you'll find several little ahas come together and help you find a bigger aha that might, start to be defined as your passion.
So I mentioned before that at the forefront of what we do for our clients, we're looking at their values, their goals, their life to set their finances up so that it really is supporting their passions, their lives, what they want to do with themselves, their communities, their families, etc. And what I find often is that clients aren't necessarily able to articulate this. And it's not just once in a while, it's a lot of the time. And most of it is because they don't have the time to get to this. They're busy juggling careers and families and maybe parents as well. And there is no time for this. So to the extent that you can, time for this is important and critical, really. It's not a weekend job. It's not, I'm going to take tomorrow afternoon off and spend some time thinking about this. That's great. And it's a continuing process. And, I think some of what we need to think about as we explore these passions is separating ourselves from our societal expectations. And who was it who put into us that having a career in XYZ field was the thing for us, and following the feeling of freedom versus dread. So when you think about doing certain things or incorporating them into your lives, are you feeling a feeling of freedom and elation? That's a good sign. When you're feeling dread, could it be that somebody else has put this in your head as a should? And being able to separate your passions from the shoulds in your world are important. And then, fear of failure and judgment and those kinds of things. If you're in relationships with people and, your spouse, your children, your community, this doesn't have to be disruptive. This can be a really positive thing that you bring into your life and their lives. It's not like all of a sudden your spouse is excluded from this. So think about these things, if you can, with yourself at the fulcrum of this equation. You've got all these people and all these relationships around you, and if you can just focus on yourself for these exercises, it'll really make a difference.
Yeah, and I think one other thing sometimes I hear from people is that, oh, as I'm trying to explore this, it's like, is that my passion? And do I want to commit now to that's my passion? Or do I need to just keep going and going, trying to find more about myself? And what I want to get people thinking about is that your passions are going to evolve. So as you find something that you think might be a real passion for you, go ahead and explore it. Call it a passion for a while. And know that if it's not your passion, first of all, that will come forward to you. But also that your passion's going to evolve over time. So if you are, if you start to dive into one thing and find it's taking you somewhere else, that doesn't mean you didn't find a passion. It just means that you continue to evolve and become more you and maybe find yourself more through this process. So lots of things to make us nervous about, that this is a hard to do or I'm afraid to commit, but keep going, because it really will make you happier in everything you're doing.
And I think also it doesn't have to be one passion, and it doesn't have to be a lifelong passion too. You can pursue things that are temporary, and it may lead you somewhere else, and it was great for a year or so, but it's going to be the springboard that gets you somewhere else.
So we have, in a moment, we're going to start talking a little bit more about some of the journeys through finding our passions and some exercises to help you do that. But and through that kind of inward look, we're going to talk about, figuring out what your strengths are. But before we do that, wanted to introduce an idea, and this idea comes from a book by Arthur Brooks, From Strength to Strength, Finding Success, Happiness, Deep Purpose in the Second Half of Life. I love this book for anybody getting into their 40s who maybe are thinking about, where am I in my career, or even my home life, or whatever it is in life. Where have I been and where am I going? The main concept behind From Strength to Strength is based on how our intelligence changes throughout our life. And that early on in our career life, we have strengths in an area called fluid intelligence. And this is our ability to reason and think flexibly and to really solve problems. And that strength grows well into our 30s and then maybe starts to wane a little bit. Doesn't mean we're crashing and burning, ladies, but it may start to wane a little bit, while another strength called crystallized intelligence starts to develop more and really becoming a strength that you're going to carry much further and longer into your life. And this is our ability to use our knowledge and bring our knowledge and the vast amount of data that we've collected throughout our lives and be able to take this and provide guidance and education and learning for other people. So, you know, often you'll hear about people who are, as they're later in careers, change to teaching. They may change to consulting. They're changing to careers where they are able to take that vast amount of data, process it faster than anybody ever could back in their 30s, because, well, first of all, we have the data that we didn't have back then, but we have now more ability to process that faster and better. So just to think about how your skill sets are changing as you grow older and how you may use them as you're exploring your passions and changing and using passions and driving it into your purpose. Love the book, recommend it to anybody over the age of 40 who wants to think about where are they going and how their strengths are changing and what they should do with that.
So I love this quote, and I think it's so great. Women often don't have time to do this, and when we can make time, we are unstoppable. So I'd love to have us hear from Tracy for a minute. Tracy is going to talk to us about her career change and Tracy, tell us what made you realize that you needed to make a change, and then what were some of the things that you did to discover what to do next?
Yeah, hello. I'm happy to share that because I think it was a huge part of my life. And again, like most women, it wasn't an easy thing to decide on. It took me probably a couple years to really get to the point where it was time to do something different. I think I enjoyed everything I did. I had been doing it for 22 years and loved the people I worked with and loved the companies I worked for. But I felt like there was something that was missing. I didn't see myself finishing my career in this role. I really wanted to have something that had an impact, that I felt like I was really helping people. And so I really dug in, and it took a couple years. I think I did a lot of journaling, and journaling in my way where I'm just writing lists, because I'm more of a list writer, like what were some of my strengths? What were some of the things that I really loved that I did day to day? What are some of the things that I wanted to get out? What didn't bring me joy anymore? What things really got me going and jumping out of bed every morning? And so I started to track that list. And more I started, like we talked about in a prior slide, like time in my own mind. I did a lot more soul searching, listening to different podcasts. I think one that I listened to back then, and I still do today, is Mel Robbins. She had a great one the other day talking about listening to your gut. And I think that was key to that, is that you know something is not right or something is different and that you want to make the change. I think thinking about a career change is nervous. I mean, you're used to what you're used to. You make great money. You're doing great things. You feel confident in that role. You know all the things you need to know, but there's also that sense of nervousness about trying something different. And so that was what I was struggling with for a couple of years before I actually had the courage to actually make that shift and change. And it wasn't easy. I think I was telling Deb and Barbara the other day, my husband actually didn't believe that I was putting in my notice the day that I did. He really thought I was not going to go through with it because it was a hard decision to make. But I think my list, my time of soul searching, self-reflection, figuring out what my strengths were, what my interests were. I had a lot of podcasts I listened to. I read a lot of books. I did a lot of research about potential careers that I really love to explore and do some more. And when I decided what I was going to go the direction, I met with a lot more people to really dig into why would I want to make this career move? Is this crazy to do at this point in my life? I was 45 years old, and it's crazy to think that you would shift completely at this point in your life. But I took the time, and it was not a quick shift. But I think 3 years into it, I am super happy about what I'm doing today. I love the work that I do. I love being able to have an impact on people's lives, and I don't regret it. But I know I talk to a lot of women that struggle with that confidence and believing in what their strengths and what their values are, and being able to see opportunity beyond that. So I think this exercise is really great, and some of the ones that are coming up next, I did them in similar ways, but in my own way. But I think it was super important to get me to think outside of myself and see that opportunity ahead.
And Tracy, are there things that you're still doing because you went through this exercise? Are there lasting things that you've incorporated into your life from all this?
Yeah, I think for me, it's making sure the things that I'm doing, and it's not just work-wise, it's the things I volunteer for, the boards that I sit on, the organizations I say yes to. But if it doesn't feel right after a bit, and then I need to let them go. You mentioned before where you feel like you have to do something because people expect that of you. And I think that's been a big shift of really owning the decisions I make and being able to let things go when they no longer bring me joy. So if that means stepping away from a board role or stepping away from a volunteer position, as much as I believe in that organization or in what I was doing, it no longer serves me the way that it did years ago. And I need to be okay with saying no, and being okay letting people disappointed with the decision I make, and making sure that I'm putting myself first and not others in that way. And so I think that's changed me quite a bit, is that I've been much more confident in saying no, where in years prior I said yes to a lot of things, which was great. It gave me a lot of opportunity, but at this point in my life, I knew that it was suffocating me in some ways.
Ah, wisdom. Isn't it great? I love the point you made about making differentiations with your time and also putting yourself first. I think we can all use more of that in our lives. And if we all focused on that a little bit more, we'd probably have a better place, because we'd all be happier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of the first exercises that we're going to get to here is looking at, and these, again, as Barbara said in the beginning, we'll send all these to you so that you can take them and work on them yourself, with your partner, with your family and friends, or whatever. But these are just really great exercises that I think have helped. And from what we described, Tracy and Barbara have both described with their journey, this has been helpful to them as well. And, we look at, what do we want from our lives? What do we want to incorporate? What do we want to expand on? And we've broken out some components here about different facets of our life to look at and to think about. And for me personally, I think about, I wanted to have a lake house for the longest time. And for me, it wasn't about the ego food of that. It was really about the feeling that it gave to me. It was about the sensation of being in that place that just made me feel like, that let me connect more deeply to the people in my life and my friends and family. And I think for me, it was that goal, that thing that I needed to incorporate into my world, was so much more than a physical place. It was really about all that it is to bring me, and the people that it's to connect me to more deeply, and to be in nature and to be inspired. And the feeling that I get when I'm there is like nothing else. So what are the interests and things like that you have in your life, and different components that are really important to you? Barbara,
and it's interesting to think about here with, as I was really developing my passion to work with folks who were approaching retirement, I found not only did I want to start developing my career there, but intellectually, I wanted to expand. I wanted to be the best at this. And it really, my whole list there on intellectually just grew in how I was going to become really the subject matter and the guidance expert on this, but there was more I needed to learn and expand. And I do that every day now. And it's become a passion as part of the passion to deliver to people. It's become a passion to be intellectually challenged and become the best because of my knowledge in the area. So as you think about the passions, just thinking about all of these different areas, I think can be really helpful to understand more about yourself and identify new passions.
And can you talk about that one word that you spoke about earlier and how that fits in an emotional category?
Yes, yes. So obviously the one that some people struggle with is, okay, emotionally, what do I want out of life? What does that mean? As I did a lot of the reading, which kind of helped to develop this exercise, in doing the reading and thinking about passions this way, emotionally, one of the words that I read about was a discussion about, how you want to feel and how you want to feel in relationships. And the word that really stuck out to me from my readings that meant something to me was to be cherished and to cherish others. And that's a word now I focus on in relationships, obviously with my children and my spouse, but also with the people that I develop my friendships with. Are they really people that I cherish? Are they really people that I feel cherished by? And how do I focus that in my relationships and focus upon that, helping other people to feel that way? I just love the word now, and it's helped me think about my relationships with people differently, so that I can help people feel cherished and hopefully in return, get some of that back.
That's great. So the next one is exploring achievements. And this is really coming at this from a little bit more of perhaps a career perspective, but it doesn't have to be. But looking at what are your greatest achievements, the ones that you value the most, not necessarily the ones that are valued by other people, but what do you value the most, and what are the things or the training or the intrinsic abilities that lie behind those accomplishments and achievements? And I think that's really, Tracy was talking about that earlier, looking at what you are good at and what makes your heart sing. And starting with this from the achievement perspective is a little bit different. It may be a little bit easier for people, but in trying new things and in playing towards your strengths, what are those things and what can you do? What kinds of plans can you make in next steps to incorporate those things that you're really good at and what come easily to you? So the next one is looking at this through the lens of the rearview mirror and looking into your past, or maybe it's current, and thinking about times in your life where you've had joy and passion. I mean, thinking about what you were like as a little kid and what that felt like when you did your, maybe it was dance, maybe it was other things. And Barbara has a story for us on this. And then what was different as a young adult, and then through middle age, what are those things that stand out and they may be different? And then as you look back, you can watch your passions morph and change. And you can even tie back to, oh, I pursued that because it led me to this, and watching some of those things, and you can glean a lot of information from there.
Yeah, sometimes when I ask people about their childhood and what their passions were in their childhood, they were kind of like, well, why do I care about this? And, that was a long time ago. And it's interesting with some clients, I hear from them, they used to love to build things. And then kind of exploring that as to, okay, just, it doesn't have to be that you liked sandcastles, right? It was that you loved building sandcastles or other things. And then taking that building to later in life, what are you building? What are you creating? And then Deb, as she mentioned, thinking about childhood, I used to love to shoot archery. But that, of course, by the time you're 13, 14, the interest in boys and schooling kind of take over and you don't do that anymore. But in middle age with my son who was shooting archery and then helping him do that, I discovered that I was driving him to the indoor range where he was shooting. And I started picking it up again too. Hey, I'm an adult, why can't I do this? And next thing you know, I discover that there are adult competitions. There's, by age range, by sex, and it's a whole world out there. And I met tremendous friends and new people and had great experiences, to the point where, like, my son's following me around in archery instead of me following him around. So there's lots of things from your childhood that you'd be amazed are still there, and opportunities that you can pursue in adulthood.
So as you're going through this process and as you're incorporating this search into your life, and I do think of it as a quest that we can pursue for our lifetimes, because as things morph and change, what are you doing differently? What do you want to change in your life? And as long as we're continuing to do this, we're growing and expanding. So, setting aside regular time for this. On my commute every day, it's an hour plus drive to work. And on my commute every day, I take time for this, for thinking about what it is that I want to incorporate or create. What am I loving in my life right now? What makes me excited? So just having that kind of set aside time for me to think about this has been really helpful to me. So just asking yourself, what do you want to do differently and what do you want to change? And as I said, as long as we keep asking that question, we're progressing.
So another way to look at and examine ourselves, thinking about passion, is to think about it through the eyes of our legacy. And so, I often ask people, what does this mean to you? And people tend to get this pretty well, that legacy means a lot more than just, what I'm going to leave money-wise or house-wise, or, what I'm leaving, the watch or the necklace that I'm leaving to the children. But it's also all about how you've impacted other people's lives. And let me rephrase that to, it's how you are impacting other people's lives every day. Another book I'll throw out here to look at is it's on my list here of, you can go to the next page here. But the Breadcrumb Legacy. And they introduce a concept that I really love about thinking about legacy in two ways. The big L. This is where, you leave a major piece of your life, whether you're leaving a job or retiring, or thinking about, what your legacy is when you die. But also think about legacy as every time throughout the day, when I leave the room, when I leave a building, when I leave a store, how did I impact the people that I just interacted with? Did I smile at somebody who, was having a tough time doing something? Did I compliment somebody who I was chatting with and, made that impact on their life? Or did I frown at somebody because they said something that I didn't like and I was disapproving to them? There are lots of ways I am impacting people every day, and all those little L's can also add up. So thinking about the big L and thinking about the little L. We have a couple of exercises that, help you think about this. My favorite, and you guys have all heard this one before, is, write your eulogy. And I'm not going to tell anybody, you don't really have to write it, although we do have on here to write a few paragraphs. But I think of what's really important is to think about what are the key words that you would want to hear in your legacy, in your eulogy. And let me real quickly just define the difference. Your obituary, and that's really your resume. That's somebody writing about, what you did in your lifetime and who your family is and where you lived and that sort of thing. Your eulogy is really focused on who you were. What was your character like? You were a leader. When you walked into a room, the room brightened because you came into it. You had presence. You made a difference in people's lives. So I love this exercise for thinking about what are just, 5-10 words, and then rank them and think about what am I doing to create that characteristic and be known for those things that are important for me to be known for. And another area that this to me is really fascinating to explore, and I think all three of us have had some thoughts about this, is thinking about what's the wisdom I'm passing on to other people in my life? What's that? How am I changing their lives because I've had experiences or ways of doing things that I pass on to people? And maybe that's impacting their life on a daily basis, and they will then pass on. And this is where, you know, how wisdom becomes how you leave the world as a different place. I love this. I use the example of people that I've worked with have come to me and told me, Barbara, that they now, when they have a problem, they stop and think to themselves, how would Barbara have solved this problem? And what I realized was, yes, I have a way of, when people I work with come to me and they have a problem, well, then I very methodically think about, well, what are all of the options, and let's evaluate them. And, you know, then let's figure out how to choose one. And these are people who said, otherwise, I saw this problem and I kind of panicked, and then said, no, Barbara would solve this very calmly and very methodically. And I thought, this is, you know, I feel good about that this is, you know, kind of a wisdom and a kind of way I've impacted people's lives and hope to continue to impact people's lives through just my wisdom on my problem solving.
Yeah, mine is when my kids were little, I would teach them about creation and teach them about, instead of just taking the day as it comes to you, think of it more in terms of a creation. You're creating your day. And yes, there's things in it you can't change, like going to school, etc. But I would say to them, what is the mixing bowl of your day, and what are you putting into it? What are you putting into your bowl for today? And teaching them that we're here to create. We're here to make our lives the way we want them, and not to just sit here on a moving sidewalk and go through the motions. So that has been one of my things that I talk about. And when I hear them, they don't use the mixing bowl analogy, but when I hear them parrot those things back or talk to their friends with that, and I think, oh, okay, they're actually hearing. So I think thinking about ourselves and what we do and why we do it and our passions as a component of that is really important.
And as Deb was emphasizing when we spoke yesterday, not just to think about how we're doing it now, but to think about how we want to do it. Are there other pieces of wisdom that we know we have that we want to pass on, and what would we change in our own behavior to be able to pass that on? And this is Deb, we're coming back again. And, you know, after you do the legacy exercises, come back and ask yourself, or anytime, once again, you have a little aha, continue to think about, what will I do differently? And in the case of thinking about this with our legacy, is every time you set something in motion, you're creating your legacy. So continue creating it, and creating it the way you want to create it. So guys, I read all of these books and many more. Some of them have been really, really great, and some of them, you know, but everything relates differently to different people. So I've tried to give a variety of books here. The Breadcrumb Legacy, as Strength to Strength, The Rhythm of Life. These are all really books that go into defining defining passion, defining purpose, giving you ideas, taking you through other people's examples. They're all really good. I love the Breadcrumb Legacy, and it's a very easy read. Strength to Strength, if you're thinking especially career-wise, really great book. The two in the upper right-hand corner, My Retirement and How to Find Your Passion. These are books that have a lot of exercises in them. So they're more workbooks. And of the workbooks I saw, these are two of the better ones. And then the last book, The Alchemist. Many of you may have heard of this. It's been around for a very long time, international bestseller, all of those good things. It's just a story, but it's a story created in a way to get you thinking about your own life by taking the journey with a shepherd who is learning about his life and searching for his treasure in life. It also is a very easy read and available in audio format. For many of these books are created in audio format too, for those people like me who don't really read and just listen to books now. But The Alchemist, excellent book. And boy, if you wanted to do a short and easy little book club on thinking about the following passions, excellent book. And Deb and I are going to be doing that. Tracy, you're included.
And if anyone wants to join us, send us an email. So we welcome you to contact us to ask us any questions. I do have 2 questions that are in the that people wrote in here. One of them is, how do I get my spouse involved in this? And I'm really interested in this. How do I get my spouse involved? So I would love to have people think of this as fun. And the more that you can think about it, take the logistics out of it, and the more you can think of it as a fun exercise to just go out to breakfast or have a glass of wine out on the deck and to talk about, what do you want to create? What's fun for you? What would you like more of in your life? And have it be a fun discussion. So it's not the logistics of how are we going to make this happen? Oh gosh, who's going to watch the kids? Who's going to do this or that? But really leave it as fun. And then you're going to look forward to the discussions. And I found that in my own life, my spouse has come along with me. So he may not be doing the same work that I'm doing, but it's almost like the upward trajectory creates a little vortex, and it drags the people in your life up with you. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, and Deb, I think your point on that is really great, that, maybe they come with you on the journey exploring themselves, or maybe it's just an opportunity for you to grow closer because you're sharing deep thoughts that you're having about yourself, which hopefully can make our spouses open up a little bit more too.
Yeah. And the other one is, once I discover these passions, then what? And I think for me, I'll share a story on this. I have always been drawn to healing and energy work, and it's not a career for me. It's not, but it's certainly something that I'm interested in, and I've always been curious about it, and I couldn't logistically fit it into my life until I decided one day, oh, well, I'm just going to fit this into my life and take some classes and join some people and figure this out. And so it hasn't become my career. It hasn't become the focus of my life, but it's certainly an interest that I'm pursuing, and it has its place. And what happens to it from here, I don't know, but it's fun to sort of be open to anything happening. I'm not going to work at my job forever and ever, so there will be change, and maybe that's a part of it, maybe it's not, but right now I'm just having fun exploring it. So I think for me, the answer to that one is about exploration and just having it be, again, make it fun, because we could all use more fun in our lives.
Tracy, what are some of the other areas that you're exploring in your life?
In my life, I think it's more finding things, like finding hobbies again that I used to love when I was younger. I think about that all the time. I think of trying to find and build friendships outside of my professional life too. I think you get away from that when you get used to hanging out with your friends, your kids' friends, parents, and so it's trying to find your own interests and exploring them more. I do CrossFit, so I have my network of friends at CrossFit that I really enjoy. I had 2 years off from that from an injury, and so happy to be back to that. So I think it's exploring things that people may tell you you're crazy doing, but I think I find joy in things that are different from my spouse and from my friends, and finding and not being afraid to test those out. I also tried sewing when during COVID, didn't work out so well. I had a hobby of wanting to sew, still working on that. But I think it's just finding things that you enjoy, and I think become, and I feel like I watch other people do stuff. I'm like, oh, I want to try that. I want to do that. And I think not being afraid to do something, I think is the key. I think we've always kind of said, oh, it's not my thing. I'm not very good at that. I think it's taking that leap of faith. And I think making a career shift for me gave me much more confidence in kind of betting on myself. Like, you know what, bet on yourself, do it, and try. And if it doesn't work out, change gears. And I think that has relieved me from a lot more stress, right? I feel freer to do the things that I really want to do. And it's been fun.
Excellent examples, Tracy, of finding new experiences, trying them out. I see, especially with people who are approaching retirement, they want to volunteer in retirement, but they have no idea how to get started there. But go out and try the new things. And then say, hey, I'm not very good at sewing, so I guess sewing really was just an interest and not a passion. But I love that because it's important to try. It's important. It might have led you to needlepoint instead of sewing or something. You never know.
Well, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate this and your attendance and your interest. And if you have suggestions on future webinars that you're interested in, please email Barbara or me, and look for our 12 Points Center for Women page that'll have more content. And that's at 12pointswealth.com. So thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to your attendance soon.